I'm about to lose my job! You may not care about keeping your jobs, but I care about keeping mine. Because if I lose my job, I have nothing. Do you hear me? I have nothing.
Beneath his uptight and grouchy exterior, Benson Dunwoody is a man, or gumball machine, who has been heavily neglected and betrayed by people around him throughout his life. And with this video, I want to give you more insight into the life of Benson, and hopefully by the end of it, you will gain sympathy and understanding for a character whose actions are often misunderstood. If that's something you're ready to see, then let's get down to it. Benson is shown to suffer from deep-rooted anger issues throughout the series. This anger usually manifests itself through constant shouting and yelling. The episode Think Positive attempts to give us the origin of Benson's anger, and we get to see the first time that he actually yells at someone in his life. That was when he quietly asked for one of his family members to pass him the salt on the dinner table. Nobody paid attention to him because they were all shouting and arguing with each other, but that's when his father took notice and gave him some terrible advice that seemed to follow him for most of his life. And that was,
Pass?
Look here, son. You're never gonna get anything in this life if you don't yell for it.
Pass? Pass the salt!
Attaboy!
this moment is actually the first time a young Benson yells for something, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be his last. Just looking at this scene in particular, you can tell that the Dunwoody household was a pretty rough one. It seems as though the normal way of communicating in their house was yelling, and it was especially encouraged among the children. We even see what appears to be Benson's older sister at the table also yelling, probably after she also received the same advice he did but much earlier in life. This is the kind of influence he gets from his family, and it isn't good. But if you think that's bad, it gets even worse with his friends and colleagues. If you didn't know, Benson has a knack for music, and he has been shown to be very proficient with drums. This stems from his time as a musician in Heir to the Throne. Not only was he part of this legendary band, but he was also a key player, because it was Benson who would play the legendary drum solo on a 150-piece kit for the band's first album that would make them so famous. This drum solo was so legendary that it was basically a death sentence for any other human who could attempt it. And even with this major contribution to the success of Heir to the Throne, the band ended up backstabbing Benson by not crediting him on the album at all and kicking him out of the band to replace him with a drum robot, the Drummertron VI. He came back a few years later to crush the robot, but it was still hurtful and very traumatized. I know that it made him lose hope in people, and for good reason too. Imagine how you would feel if your friend group just decided to sell you out like this one day after you had already done so much for them. Moving on from this event to about 10 years before the series starts, Benson begins a promising career as a stick hockey player under the moniker Death the Dragon. In fact, he is so good that he even has a gumball apprentice named Dave, and you could tell that they had a very good relationship with each other. However, this would come to an end during the next match between Dave and another insane stick hockey master named Sean. He literally executes Dave right in front of his master, and this moment would severely traumatize Benson for a long time, until he is able to come back to face Chong with Mordecai and Rigby and finally overcome this adversary. This action, however, gave Benson the unfortunate experience of losing someone who was very close, which most likely messed him up for a very long time. But the last event I want us to look at from Benson's early life is the time that he went on the game show Say That Word, where he got humiliated in the final for misusing the word bandana for banana, which led to all his hair falling out and people using it to make fun of him till the present day. Now that we've covered his childhood and early life, let's see how these unfortunate events influenced his lifestyle and choices, so that I can prove it to you that it's not his fault. And since you've made it this far, I would appreciate it so much if you could leave a like on the video. And if you're really enjoying it, I would also appreciate it if you could hit the sub button so that we can reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year and continue watching to the end. And even though we never get an episode which gives more information on Benson's family, from the little bit that we got in Think Positive, it is safe to assume that his parents are the source of his aggressive nature. As a child, he was made to believe that shouting was the only way to get his point across to someone, and that being the loudest person in the room was the only way that his voice would be heard. This may not be a problem if it happens rarely, but with Benson, it actually becomes bad and he almost gets fired when Pops threatens to fire him when his anger and yelling get out of control. His life after childhood doesn't get much better, as he just keeps on being smacked over by life, and it honestly gets to a point where you begin to feel bad for Benson because things just don't go his way, like how his band literally sold him out for a robot because they were probably jealous of his skills. That kind of betrayal from people you feel you are close to really messes a person up. It makes them lose faith in other people. So I wouldn't even blame Benson if he wasn't so trusting of people after this. And this is made infinitely worse when his friend and prodigy gets taken out by some wannabe Shao Kahn in a stick hockey game. The feeling of losing someone that close to you never leaves your mind. It may get buried by other stuff as time goes on, but it doesn't end there, because just when he decided to take a chance to start expressing himself more, he hops on the game show Say That Word and proceeds to humiliate himself on national television, becoming the target of constant harassment by so many random people, and this stops him from even deciding to go outside. So let's see, at this point in time, we have a fully grown Benson who has gone through all of this and is now going to work at the park. We need to see if it gets better, but you know it doesn't, because he has to supervise Mordecai and Rigby. But before we even get to them, I want to look at his relationship with another character at the park that probably made his life more miserable than Mordecai and Rigby ever could. The character I feel is responsible for much of Benson's pessimism is Pop's father, Mr. Maylard. And if you ever feel like Benson was harsh to Mordecai and Rigby, then you probably never noticed Mr. Maylard's treatment to Benson, because in my opinion, he is a far worse boss than Benson. Now let's get some background information on him first. Mr. Maylard is the incredibly rich owner of the park, and as we established earlier, he is the adoptive father of Pops. He is a very shrewd and strict man who displays very little empathy towards other people, the only exception being Pops. And his relationship with Benson is less than stellar. He shows very little recognition of Benson as an employee and even a person. This can be seen in the multiple episodes where he doesn't even call Benson by his name, referring to him as Beanhead and Ball Bucket among other names. He also gets angry at Benson a lot and usually shouts at him when things go wrong. He even tends to heavily blame Benson for the mistakes his employees do, like that instance when he holds Benson completely responsible for Mordecai and Rigby wrecking up the golf cart and threatens to terminate his job, even though Benson had nothing to do with it. This general lack of respect for Benson does not deter Benson from trying his best to impress Mr. Maylard at any chance that he gets. He does everything within his power to gain the admiration of this man, regardless of the disrespect. And I feel like Benson does this because of how he views Mr. Maylard. To Benson, Mr. Maylard represents someone he has always wanted to be in life: successful, confident, and of course, rich. So when he looks at the parallels between his life and Mr. Maylard's, he just wishes it somewhere that he could be like him one day. And that is why, even when Mr. Maylard continues to disregard Benson, he still tries his very best to impress him. Moving on from Mr. Maylard, we of course have to look at the central people behind this, Mordecai and Rigby. Because we know that you can't make a video about Regular Show and Benson without bringing these two slackers in. Out of all the people that work at the park, none have a more personal but volcanic relationship with Benson than these two. With Pops, Skips, High Five Ghost, and Muscle Man, there is a certain level of respect that Benson has for them, so he doesn't treat them in the same way that he treats Mordecai and Rigby. Sure, there might be a disagreement here and there with any of these people, but his interactions with them are usually cordial. This, however, cannot be said about our favorite Blue Jay and Raccoon, because they make Benson's life so miserable. And after rewatching a few episodes later on in life, you will see why he gets so mad at them. Benson at this stage in life is the exact opposite of Mordecai and Rigby. While they are fresh out of school and now entering the workforce to try and get something for themselves, Benson, who is a grown gumball machine with his own place and bills to take care of, is an adult. And as most people find out when they reach that stage in life, it's not a pretty one. You now have so much responsibility on your hands that even finding time to enjoy life becomes a problem. Benson deals with problems that every adult goes through, such as taxes, utility bills, and possibly midlife crisis stuff. All of this is made worse by the type of people he has under him at his job and the fact that his job isn't permanent. In the park, Benson is a park manager, and as an adult who just wants to do his job efficiently and go home to enjoy some ambience, Mordecai and Rigby make this next to impossible. Let's be real here, when you take away the fact that they are the main characters of the show and that we're supposed to like them, Mordecai and Rigby are actually terrible employees. They waste time, slack off, destroy property, and engage in activities that actually reduce their productivity. This would already drive any boss who has hired them crazy and confused. But for Benson, I think he actually deserves some credit for how long he's been able to put up with it. Because if that was me, they would be back on the streets after that rock, paper, scissors stuff they pulled in the pilot. Anyway, Mordecai and Rigby just add to the general stress and panic that engulfs Benson's life, because his job security is literally tied to their performance on duty. It would be so easy for Mr. Maylard to just pop up one day and decide to replace Benson with another manager because of some stunt that Mordecai and Rigby pulled. And I know that Benson realizes it, and upon everything that he has tried to straighten them, nothing works. This is also why he has trust issues with them. In the episode Blind Trust, Benson doesn't even trust Mordecai and Rigby enough to fall back in their arms for a trustful exercise, and you really can't blame him. They don't usually prove to him that they can be trustful, oftentimes doing the exact opposite in normal situations. So imagine if you were in this situation. Wouldn't you react in the same way that Benson does? It would take a strong level of self-control or general nonchalance to ignore or overlook all of this. And while this is something Benson definitely struggled with for the majority of the show, I feel like in the last few seasons, he starts to discover himself more as a person, which reduces his rage tendency. He starts to bond more with the staff at the park, which really brings back his sense of socialization. He also learns to cut back and let loose when the situation demands for it, albeit sometimes he gets a little too loose when the wings arrive. But nonetheless, he gradually improves as the show goes on. In the beginning, he was able to get Audrey, and during the events of the Dome, he was able to bag Pam, proving that he's getting better. And I feel like internally, through all of it, he has come to terms with all of the things that caused him to be uptight when we first met him as a character. Whether it's friends who betrayed him, friends who he lost, or his crippling feeling of self-deprecation. And this is what beautiful character development looks like. So if I was able to get you to see Benson Dunwoody in a new light, why don't you consider liking and subscribing to the channel, as I really enjoyed making this video because I really wanted to shine a light on Benson as a character. And I don't like it when people just look at him and rate him off as some angry person who works at the park. You can let me know any thoughts you had in the comments below, and then click on this video right here to learn 16 new facts about our regular show that you probably didn't know. And over here to watch a video on the escalation of regular show. Thanks for making it to the end. I'll see you next time. Tune out.